right, hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Pottery Live. We're going to be talking about primitive pottery, answering your questions about primitive pottery, and specifically today, I'm going to be talking about firing pottery, all the different ways of firing pottery. So we're going to be talking about different fuels, different structures, kiln-type structures, whether you're on top of the ground or in a pit and those kind of things. We're going to be talking about different things that can affect your firing, different atmospheres, those kind of things. So if you have any pottery-related questions, just drop them in the chat, and I will get those answered as soon as I can. So let me see what we got here. About 10 people on here now. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you all coming by and spending time with me today. I'm going to try to keep this lively and get through your questions. I've got about 45 slides to get through today, so I have a lot of content to go over as well. So if you stick with me through the whole thing, there's going to be a lot I think you can take away from this and apply in your own situation. Let's see, we've got chat here from me Guzman. If you are to make pottery for cool water, do you need high fire or low fire clay? Then same question for small to medium statues if you're using a bonfire approach. I don't know anything about making statues, so I think you're, I don't know. So if you're making like an Oya for keeping water cool, like my recent video, honestly, you probably want like a low fire clay, but in my experience, most clays, even if they're like a stoneware clay, you can usually make earthenware if you can just get your temperature up over 800 degrees Celsius. So don't be dissuaded if all you have is some high fire clay. Try it in an open fire and see how it does, because it may work. But you do want to keep that firing temperature low, because as soon as that clay starts to vitrify, you're going to start losing porosity, which is what you're looking for. Ren Pixie is here. Hello, Ren Pixie. Stavan Slav, I can't say your name, sorry. Hello. Christian Kansas, hey there. In love with pottery, hello. Somebody from Morocco. Foud Moklufi, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. And Brenton from North Carolina. All right, we've got international audience today. So the subject again is firing outdoors and the different ways, different kinds of fuel and that sort of thing. Now, if you're interested in learning more about outdoor firing pottery without a kiln, I want to take a second to promote the Southwest Kiln Conference. It's coming up in, I think, about 3 weeks. So it's October 7th through the 9th. And it's going to be held in Silver City, New Mexico this year. So southwestern New Mexico. And it's a great place to learn about this subject, because there's going to be people there firing in all sorts of different ways. They're going to have trench kilns. They're going to have like a brick urban anasazi type that Tony Soares talks about. There's going to be surface firings. There's going to be shallow pits. There's going to be people firing with bark. There's going to be people firing with wood. There'll be people firing with dung. So it'll be a good opportunity to get, not only to see different methods of firing, but also to get a chance to talk to these people who are experts in these different methods of firing, and get your questions answered and get some ideas on how you can apply these to your own pottery. Now, if you can't make it to Silver City in October, I understand. I mean, we've got people here from all over the world, so obviously, even people that live in nearby states, some people have to work, things like that. So not everybody's going to be able to make it. I am going to take my video camera, and I'm going to make videos of as much of the content as I can at the conference this year. So I'll get some of the lectures and put those up on my channel. I will be doing a live stream on Saturday. I will be recording a lot of the different firings that are going on and then making videos about that as well. So even if you don't have the ability to attend the conference, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of that content, because it's going to be good information for anybody wanting to learn how to fire outdoors. Now on Friday of the Kiln Conference at 4:30, and it's going to be 4:30 sharp. So I'm going to be giving away, I've got all this pottery material that my friend Tom Weiss, he passed away recently, left me. There's pottery books, there's different kinds of slips, there's different tools, and I'm going to be giving that stuff away. So at 4:30, everybody who is either an Ancient Pottery Club member, the link to that's down the doobly-doo, that's my Wednesday night Zoom class, or a YouTube channel member, that's with the blue join button below this live stream. For those people, we're going to draw numbers. So everybody will draw a number, and then we'll take turns choosing what they want from this stuff I have to give away. So I'm going to be giving away a bunch of stuff. If you are a channel member and you can't make it to the Kiln conference, if you let me know what you're looking for, a specific book or a slip or something, then I will draw for you. And then as long as you're willing to cover the postage, I'll make sure you get that stuff. So anything that's left over after all the channel members and Ancient Pottery Club members go through it, I will be, making publicly available to anybody at the conference on Saturday evening. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, and I'm throwing some of my own stuff in there, some pots that I have to get rid of, and a few little things here and there. So if you are interested in that is going to be Friday evening, 4:30 at the Kiln conference. I'm going to be getting rid of that, and that is for channel members, Ancient Pottery Club members. Also, if you wouldn't mind, hit that like button for me, because that really helps me with the algorithm on these live streams. So if you hit the like button, that'll make sure that they push it out to more people. And like I said, if you're interested in learning more about this outdoor firing, make sure you subscribe so you can catch all that Southwest Kiln Conference content that's coming up. Let me check the chat real quick, make sure I've got all the questions answered, and then I'll move right into my presentation. Mr. Oliver, I started building a brick kiln because of you. Thank you. Thoughts on using ordinary red brick? That's all I used. I used red brick that I bought at the Home Depot. Just ordinary, like, I don't know what they were, 50 cents a brick or something. A very cheap red brick. And that works fine for low fire. As long as you're not firing up to 1300 C or something. Those, just a typical, like a primitive brick kiln, you're only reaching temps of maybe 900, 1000 C. Those bricks were fired hotter than that when they were made at the brick factory. So I got something from the Netherlands and Texas. Hello, everybody. In the Piedmont area of North Carolina. They got some good clay up there in North Carolina. I've been using charcoal with great success, says Brenton. That's great. Charcoal's good. Moving to very rural Elfrida in December. Curious on tips on firing there. Elfrida, Arizona. Jinxie Wave Maiden. Because I'm very familiar with Elfrida. I grew up down in Cochise County, and I own property out there near Elfrida. So hit me up, and maybe we can fire together out there. You've got a lot of cow manure if you're talking about Elfrida, Arizona. That's for sure. But mesquite is good too, and we'll talk about that when we get into this. How do you think the fire were in ancient Anasazi times? We'll talk about that too. They used generally these trench kilns, that I'm going to show you some pictures of. I would fire bricks from big box stores work for a kiln. Yes, absolutely. So Tom asked if fire bricks from big box stores. Well, if they're selling fire bricks are for high temperatures. You can just use ordinary red clay bricks. Now try to avoid the cement bricks, because a concrete is just lime and it's going to break down in the firing. But a clay brick will last forever in that sort of a situation. Do you know if glazing in an open fire is possible? No, in order to glaze, in order to get a safe glaze that is not lead-based, you're going to have to reach temperatures of 1300 C, which you're not going to do in an outdoor firing. You need a proper kiln to get glaze. Now, if you're talking about lead-based glaze, yes, you can do that. Love your channel. I've been away from pottery for a while and need some basic firing methods. Would be interested in kiln building, says Vincent. So stay tuned for the presentation I have, Vincent, and I'm gonna help you out there. I have a lot of content to cover. I was told concrete pavers would explode. Yeah, they won't explode, I don't think, the concrete pavers, but they're not going to hold up over firings. They're going to start breaking down. Gabriel says, hey, Andy, would like to ask about your drying process and how long does it take in total? Been getting cracks myself. Cracks in your pottery? Or we're talking about drying pottery? I live in Arizona, so it's very dry. And the drying time that your pottery takes to dry is going to vary quite a bit depending on where you live. So if you live in Louisiana, it may take a month to dry your pottery. Here in Arizona, it may take a couple of days. If you're getting a lot of drying cracks, even though you're trying to keep it drying slow, keep it covered with a piece of cloth or something, turn that pot upside down so you don't get rim cracks. We've got some sirens right now, so hold on. And if it's still drying slow and you're still getting cracks, you need to add more temper. That's going to prevent those. It's quite humid here in the Philippines. Well, there you go. You probably do need some more temper in your clay, Gabriel. Port Orchard, Washington. Molly Frankel. Hey, Molly. Nice to hear from Port Orchard. I'm familiar with Port Orchard. I'm from Puyallup, Washington myself originally. New from New Hampshire. No clay here, though. I am living on a huge granite rock. I bet there's clay around somewhere, sheepdog. You got to look. Jenksy, thank you. Would love to fire together. Do you think a brick kiln will be okay for my husband too, used For metal for, yeah, I mean, you can do the brick kiln. I have a couple videos on doing that if you want. Honestly, you probably got good soil there in Elfrida for doing an adobe kiln, which is a lot cheaper and actually will hold up better than a brick kiln. Joshua, there are low firing glazes you can get. Well, I don't know about that, Judith Winter, but you know, I'm open to suggestions. But low firing glazes that are not lead based, that will glaze at temperatures below 1,000 Celsius. I sure haven't heard of that, but maybe. What are the benefits from firing with cow manure? I'll get to that. We'll be talking about that in a minute. What temp do we need to achieve wood ash? Yeah, you need like 1,300 degrees for wood ash. You're not going to do that in an outdoor firing. No way. And the same with salt. I get a lot of questions. Wood ash glaze, salt glaze, because those are like natural materials that'd be easy to do from home without buying something from the store. But you need a proper kiln to reach the kind of temperatures you're going to get for wood ash or salt glazes. Can you make an arrowhead from clay? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It wouldn't be very durable, but then again, I mean, like an obsidian point, I mean, if you hit something hard, isn't that durable either. Will you be selling gourd scrapers anytime soon? Brenton S. wants to know about gourd scrapers. They are available on my website right now. There's a link in the doobly-doo, or you can just go to ancientpottery.how. They've been there for a month or so. Trying to use brick kiln with the holes in them, and they blow up in the fire. Try using clay brick with the holes, they blow up. Huh. I can't imagine why that would be, but okay. I see. Thanks. I'll try them. Okay, let's get to the presentation. All right. So I've got a whole thing here. First, let's talk about different kinds of fuel. So this is really important, and I get this question a lot. What kind of wood should I use? Well, you can use almost any wood that you have where you live, but there are some caveats, and let me explain. So this is a fire. I went up to the Archaeology Southwest Field School to make pottery with the students and fire, and when I got up there, they said they had plenty of wood, and I got there, and they had all this split pine. And, I mean, it's okay. Lots of people fire with pine, don't get me wrong. It doesn't burn to coals, though. Pine just burns away, and it doesn't really make good coals, which is why you don't barbecue with pine, right? They'll barbecue with, like, mesquite or hickory or something that makes good coals. And pine doesn't do that. So this is called a primary fire right here. So in this sort of a situation, we're just preheating those pots, trying to get that extra moisture out before we fire them. And we're building a bed of coals. So then I'll stack the pots above those coals and then build the fire around it, as you'll see in some further pictures. But in this case, that pine was literally, after it burned to coals, a little later than this, and I'm trying to get the pot stacked, and it takes some time to kind of arrange the pots, you know, the way you want it, with airspace and everything, and got an airplane overhead. And as I'm stacking that pottery, the coals are just burning out because it's pine. So it's good to have a good hardwood if you want those coals. It's also going to make your fire last a little longer at the end. But you can use almost anything. So here's an example. This is an old O'odham lady here in the Tucson area, sort of. You can see the sacred mountain of Bobbakiveri Peak behind her. So she's out by Sells, Arizona, if you want to look that up on a map. And she's firing with mesquite wood. You can see she's got a big pile of it behind her, and she's got building a little teepee. And those are little sticks, right? We're going to talk a little bit about the size of wood. But even though this isn't big, hefty chunks of wood, a lot of times little sticks like that will get everything you need, and it'll still make those coals that you want too. So she stacked her pottery above like what you would call a primary fire. So there's already coals under it. She's got a piece of tin there to kind of keep those coals from falling on top of her pot. And then she's building a teepee around it, which is a pretty common kind of outdoor surface firing. Also notice that she is in a shallow pit. She's not directly on the surface. It's a shallow hole there. Now you can use all kinds of wood, like I said, and wood comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. So here I like to use mesquite. It burns relatively hot. It makes good coals. People use pine. People up northern and southwest, like Utah, Colorado, New Mexico. A lot of those people use juniper wood, and juniper wood's good too. It burns a lot similar to mesquite. What I do find is it's good to be familiar with a particular wood and use the same wood every time, because you get a feel for it, for how fast it burns, how hot it burns, and you can do better firings once you kind of get a feel for it. So whatever you're using, if you try to just stay with the same wood, I think you're going to do better over time. The other thing about the wood is, as you're building that teepee fire around your pottery, or however you're constructing that firing, you want to make sure that it's all the same mix of wood, right? So if you have this side is pine and this side is mesquite, well, that pine's going to burn away first, and then that mesquite's going to still be burning there. And then it'll be lopsided. This side will be getting cold, and this side will still be hot. So if you do have a mix of fuels, you want to make sure you got like an even mix all the way around, so it burns out and it burns up at the same rate. Now this is actually cholla cactus wood, and it's hollow inside. It's got a big hole in the middle, and it's full of holes on the outside. But I actually know a Native American potter here in the Tucson area that fires with cholla wood. So I mean, this just goes to show that whatever you have in your area probably will work if you just get a grip on how it works. You know, like I said, every fuel is going to be a little bit different. Do some experimenting, see what you can do. But where I fire, I've always been curious about the cholla wood because this friend of mine, like I said, fires with it. But I've never been in the places where I fire, there just isn't enough cholla that I could ever do that. So maybe someday I'll get a chance to try that out. And then, there's split cordwood, which is common. It's easily available. You can purchase it. A lot of times you can purchase this even at like a convenience store, right? Like Circle K or something sells bundles of firewood out in front. And usually it's like split pine or something. This is split juniper or maybe Arizona cypress that I use when I go up to the Q Ranch. They have a big wood pile that I get my wood from. And I really like to fire with smaller material myself because that big wood, it produces a lot of heat, but it also burns for it takes a long time. It takes it longer to come up to temp, and then it's going to hold it longer too. And I find that I can get my firing done. If I use smaller diameter material, wood, maybe my wrist size or smaller, then it'll come up to temp and burn out, and I'll be done in like half an hour. But if you use this like split cordwood, this fire is going to take you 45 minutes, an hour to get up to temp and then burn down. And in the end, your peak temperatures are not going to be significantly higher than using smaller material, is what I found. So the split cordwood works. It's convenient for a lot of people. It's just not my favorite because of like the way it burns. Also, I'm trying to replicate pottery that was made here 700 years ago. And those people had stone axes. They didn't have chainsaws. They weren't splitting wood. This is not accurate to what they would have had. I think they would have had things that they could break, like over their knee or with their foot or something. Like I said, maybe like wrist size or a little smaller, but not super big wood. Or if it is big, it's a little bit rotted, so it's more easily broken. And so this is an example, pretty typical of my type of firing. These are mesquite wood bits that, there may be there's probably nothing there that's over 3-inch diameter. But they're packed pretty tight, and this is in a little bit of a shallow pit, much like that O'odham woman we looked at earlier. And those will make a nice hot fire, and they will burn down to coals in, half an hour, maybe 40 minutes tops. And sometimes if you stack that wood right, the way it is here, then as it burns to coals, those coals will lay on top of the cover sherds or the pottery and kind of make a little oven and hold that heat in there and just kind of give you a nice long soak at the end, which is nice. So you can do good with a good hardwood in just small sections like this. You can get a good firing, real good that oxidation happens at the end, at this stage when it's coals. And so when you have all those coals kind of sitting on top of your pottery, then you're burning out that carbon. You're hopefully kind of oxidizing those irons and stuff that you're trying to get. So if you're making like polychrome or decorated pottery, you're going to get good bright colors. So that's kind of my thoughts on types of wood, species of wood. Let me go back now and I'll check the chat to make sure I don't miss any questions. While I'm doing this, if you could, let me know if my audio level is okay, because like last time or the time before, I got almost all the way through the live stream and somebody said, oh, your audio is kind of low. So it'd be good to know that up front. All right, and if you haven't already, you could give this video a like because that'll help me in the algorithm. Okay. Where am I at here? I'm looking at the chat. Hi, Andy. Do you know anything about anthill clay? No. I don't know what Kimmeridge clay is. If you said anthill clay, the ants in my area do not make hills out of clay. It's all sand. I've gotten bone dry manure to fire to 1550F in a shallow pit. Yeah, manure fires nice and hot. Manure is a good fuel, actually. Andrew Sock, keep your bricks covered when not using kiln if bricks are wet. Yeah, that's probably what happened with that blown up brick, isn't it? You probably had moisture in there. Have you ever fired using railway ties? Oh, gosh, no. Railroad ties are full of that creosote. That stuff is nasty, and you don't want to breathe that. Stay away from any treated lumber. Like the green treated lumber, that stuff is poison. That's like some kind of copper oxide or something. You don't want to breathe that. And the same with railroad ties. Avoid that stuff. If you're going to burn that stuff, get out of there. Osage orange. Yeah, when I lived in Oklahoma, there's a lot of Osage orange out there. I never fired any pottery with it, but I hear it's good hard wood, so probably would work. Bobby Silas is here. Hey, Bobby. Old Ugly is here. Good to see you, Tom. How do you measure fire temperature? So I have a video on this. Molly Frankel asked, how do you measure fire temperature? I have a good video if you go back and look in my videos. I don't know why that came up. Okay. I have two things. I have a thermocouple, which is like a long probe that I can stick in the fire and then bury the wire. And then there's a little, basically like a little thermometer on a little, gauge. And that's a good way to do it. But that's only going to measure it in one spot, wherever you put that probe. I also have an infrared gun, which I like a lot better. Because then I can if I can get a shot through the wood, I can hit the pot. And I can go around and hit it in several places and get temperature readings right on the surface of the pottery, which is nice. So infrared gun and thermocouple. And like I said, there is a video I made a year and a half ago about using different methods and which one is best. So you might be interested in that. Naomi, hello from Quebec. Do you know if very soft sediment-derived rocks could work as temper if you grind it fine enough? Oh, sure. It doesn't even have to be ground that fine. Anything that's non-plastic, that is, it's not, sticky and moldable, can work as temper. Molly Frankel, is driftwood okay? Sure, driftwood would work fine. Is water in the ground a problem? Oh, like if the ground is wet when you're firing? It can be, but if you're doing like a primary fire, like did you see when I had all those pots stacked around that fire? That's called your primary fire, where you're just preheating the pots. You got a nice, good, long primary fire, you'll dry out the ground. When I went out to the field school this summer, 4th of July, I went out and fired with the Archaeology Southwest Field School. It had rained like several days in a row before. Everything was, the ground was soaking wet. And so we started that fire the day before. All night we burned this fire in the pit where we were going to fire the pottery. And then we got up the next morning and there were still hot coals and we built some more fire in it. So by the time we fired the pot, we dried out the ground a little bit. So you do have to think about that if you're getting a lot of moisture. And if you know you're going to be firing and it's near your home, you could go out and put like a piece of tin or a piece of plywood or a tarp, something down to keep the moisture off of that ground. Ren Pixie, how would you fire a huge pot like the one you showed from the museum? It's fired exactly the same. You just have more wood, And, you can fire it down in a little bit of a shallow trench, and that gives you like a little more, less height to have to get that wood over. But, you're going to use the length of your wood, not the diameter, but the length of your wood is going to depend on, the size of your pot, how much pot you have to get over the top of. Gabriel, did a test fire of a new charcoal draft kiln I made recently. It seems underestimated how draft kilns can get, how hot, and melted some pots. Yeah, no, they can get really hot, and they can get really hot really fast. So you also need to be sure you don't ramp that temperature up too quick and cause those pots to break from thermal shock as well. Audio's okay. Good. Glad to hear that. D. Ramirez, is this the way you'd fire the Oyas? Sure. This is exactly how I would fire an Oya. Yep. My Fairy Treasures. Hi, Andy. This is fabulous and informative. Have done a fire recently under your direction. It was great. I'm glad to hear that, Fairy Treasures. Mesquite wood is full of creosote. No, mesquite wood is not full of creosote. It burns really clean. There's very little like sap or resin in mesquite wood. Granny Goose, I have made a bow from Osage orange. Yeah, it's famous for making bows from. That's why the other name for Osage orange is bow dark. It means bow de arc. Anyways, it has to do with making bows. Tamarack wood, Mama Bird, Arizona. I don't know anything about Tamarack wood. I couldn't say, but like I said, almost any wood can be made to work. Do you know any good areas in New Mexico to source clay, primary deposits? No. There's that place along the freeway between Truth or Consequences and Hatch. And when you drive through there, right along this, real close to the Rio Grande, there's layers of clay in there. And I always see it, but I've never stopped. So that's all I can tell you about New Mexico. There is a lot of good clay in New Mexico. I just don't know where any of it is. Jingnong Straw Rope Factory, China is here. Good to see you, Ted Dallos. I've used anthill clay here in Minnesota. In the winter, their tunneling goes 6 or more feet down to solid red clay. Only thing, it is about half organic. Takes forever to sieve. Nom is here from Australia. She's a little late, but better late than never. This live stream is real. Yeah, it's also certified. Some fire bricks I had underwent effervescence after firing wet. Well, that's weird. I'll have to watch the full live stream later as I have to bow to get to a doctor's appointment. See you, Judith. Judith is leaving for a doctor. Okay, let me get back to my presentation now. So now let's talk about types of wood and more specifically different forms of wood or different forms of fuel. Let's say that. So let's talk about cordwood first. So this is a picture from when we held the Southwest Kiln Conference in Tijeras, New Mexico. And this is just a small amount of the fuel they go through at the Kiln Conference. And they actually go out with chainsaws like the day before the conference and collect wood. So this year up in Silver City on Thursday, we're going to go out. Those of us that have trucks and chainsaws will go out and cut wood and haul it back to the firing site on Thursday. And then we won't fire until Saturday. And so they have a lot of cut cordwood. Like I said, it's not my favorite. I'll even show you some pictures of those firings they do there, and they use a lot of cordwood. They'll use a whole cord of wood on some of those fires, and it makes a big flame. But I prefer, like I said, even at the Kiln Conference, if I can, to use smaller material. And I think that's more like what the ancients were using, and I think I get as good or better results personally. So here's one of my firings up at Q Ranch where I fire with cordwood. This is cordwood after it's been burning for maybe 40-45 minutes, and it's burning down to coals. It just burns for a very long time, and that's really the advantage of it. If you want a fire to burn for a longer duration, heavier wood. If you're using smaller wood and you want it to burn over a longer duration, then you have to kind of refuel partway through. And then here's this is an example of one of those big fires at the Kiln Conference. This is up at the conference in Tijeras, New Mexico. And yeah, that's a lot of wood on there, and that's a lot of fire. And the trouble is, the pots are actually in a pit. They're down so that they're sitting down below, and I'll talk more about these trench kilns. They're sitting down so the tops of the pots are just about at the surface. So that whole pot is under the level of the ground. So, I mean, what you know about fire, heat rises, right? So you've got a lot of convection. You've got a lot of heat going up. You got radiant heat all around. Those people that are standing back there are standing as far back as they are because the radiant heat off a fire like this will just melt your face if you get too close. So most of the heat that's being generated on this fire is not having any impact on the pottery. The pottery's down here. So most of that heat is going straight up and it's going out in all directions. So in some ways, it's a bit wasteful. I'm not saying it doesn't work. It just you are using a lot of wood. Here's another one. You can see it just cut, chainsaw cut wood. And I don't know. I just can't see the ancient people going through this much. You know how much labor it would take to cut this volume of wood with stone axes? It's just mind-boggling. So I really think they were using smaller material. So that's cordwood. Now, if you go up to the pueblos in New Mexico, you'll find that most of them, those that fire traditionally, a lot of the Pueblo potters today are using kilns. A lot of, if you go to certain villages especially, like Hopi, they mostly fire traditional at Hopi, most of the potters. But if you go to Zuni, like 99% or more of the potters are firing in electric kilns. And the same goes for Acoma and a lot of other pueblos. Now, I'm not throwing them all in the same batch. It varies a lot village to village is what I'm saying. But those that do fire traditionally in the pueblos today, most of that is manure. So this is a Hopi man who's tending the fire, and it's built up on a little brick or on a little stone platform. And the pots are on top of that, and then there's some manure on top of that. Now, it does vary some from village to village, also the type of manure. So the Hopis tend to use sheep manure. So they get these sheep, the Navajo sheep are driven into like corrals, like overnight to keep the coyotes away and other times. And so they spend time in these corrals and they poop and then they trample it down, and they poop and they trample it down. And so over the course of years, they build up this thick layer of manure in these corral, at the bottom of the corral. So they get in there and they dig that out, and they will haul it up to the Hopis and sell it by the truckload. And the Hopi potters will pay, in some cases, thousands of dollars over the course of a year for all this manure for them to fire their pottery. And they, because it's all been trampled in the bottom of the corral, it's a solid chunk, so they can cut it into like bricks, little squares, and then they can kind of stack it up around the pottery. So it stacks really nice, better than the cow manure. Now, cow manure works good too, but in that case, you've got whole like cow pies. If you ever spent time on a farm, when we were kids, we used to have cow pie fights, right? We'd throw them at each other. But it's a little different form factor, and they're not so easily stacked as that sheep manure that is in solid chunks. And it works good. And the good thing about manure firing is that not only does it burn really hot, it holds its shape. So as it burns down, it creates this kind of like ashen oven, right? So if you stack it up into this little dome shape around the pots, then as it burns, it holds that shape. And so you're left with this kind of ash oven that your pot's inside of. And it's really insulative, and it holds the heat in really good for a nice long oxidizing soak at the end. So really, really good and super abundant, right? I mean, it's just manure, right? So it makes a really good material. I'm hoping to do a video about manure firing later this year. Now, this is Wayne Keene. So Wayne, he's a regular at the Kiln conference, has been for years. And he always teaches this tile painting class. So on Friday night at the conference, they're going to hold this tile painting class that Wayne puts on. And then on Saturday, he'll take these tiles out, and this is Saturday morning of last year's conference, and he's preheating the tiles here. So the tiles are all laid out, and then there's a couple of pots. I think those are his pots that he made. And he's preheating. This is not manure. This is juniper wood, but he's just preheating them. And then what he's going to do is he'll stack the tiles in the pottery over the coals, those juniper wood coals, and then he'll stack that sheep manure over the top of there to get a nice firing. So if Wayne's tile painting class is free, and he puts a lot of labor into this. He makes all the tiles himself. They're made from, or at least slipped with, Hopi clay. So you'll get a nice kind of a peachy color and a little blush on that. And then he provides all the paints, and it's completely free. So if you are coming to the conference and you're interested in Wayne's class, you've got to email Wayne as soon as possible to get on the list. There's only 20 people allowed in the class. So this is a really great opportunity if you are interested in that. Wayne's email address is on the Kiln Conference website. So the link to the Kiln Conference is down in the doobly-doo, but it's also swkiln, swkiln.com, and you'll find a link to Wayne's email address. So email him if you're interested in that tile painting class. He puts a lot of labor and love into this class, and like I said, it's completely free to the first 20 people to sign up. So when I first started teaching pottery workshops, I used to do manure firings exclusively. So this is one of my early firings. Pots are stacked over coals, and then I've got a wash tub sitting above the coals, and then manure stacked around it. I used some baling wire, you can see here, to try to keep those cow pies in place, but it didn't work very good. You can see them falling down. The advantage to cow pie fire, the advantage to manure firing, aside from, just that it reaches good temperatures and it's abundantly available and practically free most of the time, is that it doesn't produce a lot of smoke or flame. So you can do it in town, in a yard or something, and the neighbors aren't even going to call the fire department, in most areas, because it might smell a little funny, but it's not making a bunch of flames and smokes. So it's really easy to do in a small area. The only thing you have to worry about is radiant heat. There's not sparks flying out. There's not a bunch of smoke. There's no flames you have to worry about. So it's really nice. And, this is what I would do. Before my workshop, I'd just go out in the desert. I'd bring some like hefty bags. I'd go to a place where cows had been hanging out, and I'd just throw those cow pies in a couple of hefty bags. So you don't even need like a truck to haul firewood. When I get to the firing, I just pull out my big garbage bags full of manure, carry them over. Real easy to transport, real easy to collect. I go out to public land and collect firewood. I have to have a permit to collect firewood on public land, right? Nobody hassles you about collecting manure on public land. They're like, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm picking up these cow pies, and they're like, go for it. So manure is an awesome fuel. And one of the best things about it is, like I said, it's practically free. You go to a farmer and ask for if you can have some cow pies, he'll probably say yes, right? What does he care? They're cow pies. He's got plenty of them. And like I said, you can put them in a hefty bag and throw them in the trunk of your car or in the back seat or something. It's not a big deal. So manure, let's see, I've got a couple more pictures of manure fires here. Oh, this is Wayne. So Wayne, we talked about Wayne Keene in his tile painting class. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting a potential spam call. I had it on silent. I don't know why it's doing that. So this is Wayne Keene. So he does the tile painting class. This is a pot he made. He does real beautiful work. And this was made with Hopi clay again. And this is after the firing. So he's used those, like I told you, those chunks of sheep manure that are in slabs. And you can see kind of the square shape about them. They've all been pulled away. This is after the firing. But even after those are done burning, they kind of retain that kind of square slab, shape. And so you can see that. And before he pulled it away, they were still just stacked up around his pot. So that's really one of the advantages to manure is that, it kind of holds its shape. It's real easy to kind of stack it up and stuff. So let's go back and check on it. Oh, why does that always do that? Let me go back and make sure I'm caught up on the chats. Gabriel, nice to hear others are using anthill clay. I'm using termite mound clay. Yeah, the ones around here don't really use clay. It just tends to stink a little sometimes. Oh, the termite clay does, or the anthill clay? I'm not sure what you're saying. Andrew Sock, I wonder if worm poo would be a good... worm poo? Yeah, I don't know about that. My Fairy Treasures, how long do you wait after painting your pots to fire? I live in Las Vegas, so it's really dry. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can paint like Wayne's tile painting class, right? He paints the tiles Friday night and he fires them Saturday morning. You're adding so little moisture to the clay by painting them. It's really not an issue. Now, if you were slipping it or something, that's adding a little more moisture. But if you're preheating those pots carefully, like really preheating them good, you'll get rid of any moisture you get from painting. You could literally paint the pot and fire it right away. It really won't be a problem. Mama Bird, Arizona. Have you ever burnt metals in the fire, such as copper, to bring out different colors? No, I don't do that kind of firing. That's a pit firing where they just are decorating the pottery. I'm literally firing pottery. That is turning it to ceramic. With those ones where they throw in like copper and, Epsom salts and stuff, they've already bisque fired that pottery. That's not a true pottery firing because that pottery's already been fired. It's already been turned to ceramic. I'm talking about taking mud and turning it into ceramic in an outdoor fire without a kiln. Those people are, they're cheating, right? They're calling it a fire when they're actually kiln firing the pottery. They're just decorating it with that. So, Andrew Sock, cook a pig at same time to avoid waste. Yeah, I always talk about like roasting hot dogs or marshmallows or something over the fire. I never think about it. The thing is, when you're firing pottery, there are so many factors, and you're so focused on getting this right. I think my friend Sherilyn was the one that said, it's like an emotional roller coaster when you fire. You're so intensely focused on this fire, making sure everything goes right, looking at the fuel, paying attention to the wind, all these things, the temperatures, that you don't have time to worry about like cooking food or anything. It's a lot of focus. And when you're done, you're exhausted because not only is it a lot of work, but it's mentally and emotionally draining as well. So it's fun to say, oh, I'm going to cook food on my fire. I never think about it because I'm, like laser focused during the firing. Granny Goose, have you ever used dry palm leaves? No, but I've seen it done on YouTube. Yeah, I know you can use palm leaves for firing. I've seen it done. Gabriel, perhaps it does, Michael. Andrew Suck. Wormhole casts are quite pliable and help cool bee stings. And you would add that to your clay for plasticity? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I'm not going to say nothing's impossible. I mean, there's things you wouldn't believe were possible that are possible. It just seems pretty crazy to me. But I don't know. Granny Goose, I used an old scrap metal piece from a shed once and got a yellow flash on one piece. Oh, yeah. So if the metal is galvanized, like a wash pan or something, then that's zinc. And that can give you like a yellow color. Also, when that zinc is burning, it produces like toxic fumes. So you want to stay away from the fire if you are burning any like galvanized metal in it. Granny Goose, thank you. Sasha, what are some options for shards to cover pots if I don't have any broken pots to use yet? Piece of metal, Sasha, for cover shards. So she's asking what to use for cover shards if I don't have any broken pots to use for cover shards. You can go down to the hardware store and buy some flower pots and break them. Automatic shards, right? Or you can just use some pieces of metal, pieces of tin, old buckets, anything. Now, if you're burning galvanized, don't breathe the fumes. Once you've burned it once, the way I understand it, you've burned all those fumes off. But initially, that galvanized is going to produce fumes. But yeah, I have buckets. I use galvanized buckets. And a good bucket, you can get like smaller buckets and bigger buckets and just place it right over the pot. Perfect, covers the whole pot all at once. So that was what I would recommend. Will any manure work? Well, you want manure that is, in a stackable form, right? So like a cow pie or those chunks of sheep manure I was talking about. Like you would have trouble if you had a big mountain of horse manure, you would have trouble doing it because it's crumbly, it's soft, it's not solid like a cow or a sheep, those sheep patties. So they use horse manure to smother pottery to make it black, like that blackware they produce up in the northern pueblos in New Mexico. But it would be hard to stack horse manure up so that it wasn't smothering your pottery. So, I mean, the same would go for rabbit manure, right? Deer manure. You could have a big mountain of deer manure, but you'd really have trouble making it into a form unless you could pack it into cubes or bricks like that sheep manure is. So, yeah, I think the form factor is the biggest thing. I think any manure will burn, but the form factor is important. Andrew Sock says, cow manure... Oh, I lost it. It just jumped on me. Doggone it. I don't know why I did that. Cow, horse manure is just grass bundles. That's right. Yeah, that manure is just grass. But it's the form factor of the grass. And I'll talk about grass firings in a little bit and the problems with it. But the form factor, to be able to stack that grass up. Harbor Freight has infrared laser thermometers from $20. Yeah, be careful of just any those infrared thermometers because a lot of those don't go high enough for an outdoor pottery firing. So you need to look for the ones that'll go to at least like 900 Celsius. Because a lot of those are just used for like cooking or, those like different things. And they don't go hot enough. Like checking your engine temperature and things may not be hot enough for what you need for a firing. So check how high they go. Some of those cheap ones don't go high enough. In love with pottery, we did a trench firing in Bullhead and wrapped my parrot feathers, olive oil, copper. Yeah, that's one of those. Parrot feathers. The Africans flatten out their patty cakes so they burn better. Sure. Yeah, and that's probably a good way to do it. If you have the time to have manure that's in the wrong form factor, you can make it into patties or whatever. Let's see. Granny Goose, what? Let's see. I'm trying to find any questions here. Okay. Oanu Russo Ungurianu. Sorry. Hi from Romania. I wonder if I can paint my pots using white, green, or red clay from the store. The food grade ones. Well, I don't know. It depends on what your white, green, or red. I mean, clay should be okay, but I don't know. You have to experiment. Can you use terracotta pots? Zippy Tippy, are you asking if you can use terracotta pots for cover sherds? Because, yeah, you definitely can. Does the manure have to be extremely dry? Yes, you definitely want dry manure. Damp manure is not going to burn as hot or as good, so you want dry manure. So a lot of times at Hopi, they buy their manure. Like I said, people will bring truckloads up there and sell it, and then they'll stack it like in a shed or put like a tarp over it or something to keep it dry until they use it. Are pots food safe that have organic paint in it? Absolutely. Organic paint is just carbon, so yeah, it's absolutely food safe. What you need to be careful of is some of that mineral paint, like manganese or lead-based paint and those kind of things that you don't want to ingest. So, A. Duncan, I melted aluminum siding when I tried to use it as a fire break, almost a foot. Yeah. Aluminum would probably make a bad cover sherd because it would melt too low. You definitely want probably more steel. Can you do this method for bisque firing? Yeah, it's the same as like a bisque fire. It's a low temperature firing. What else effects do you think those packs you can get that makes fire change color would make when they put up against pots off? I don't understand your question, Jinxie Wave Maiden. It goes all goofy here. What effects do you think those packs you can get that make fire change color would... Oh, so those things you throw in like your fireplace to make... I have no idea. Those are some kind of chemicals. I have no idea what those do. Andrew Sock, they cook a camel dung in the east and flatten it into flat discs to burn and stack it. I don't think if they fire pottery, but they can... Willow Maine. Hi, Andy. I'm a big fan. I started making clay out of my own dirt and making pottery. The only problem is I can't make pottery with a big extremity because it falls off. How can I fix this? You have to be careful. If you have handles, or like if you make a little guy and you make arms on him, those are likely to break. Which is why if you look at prehistoric pottery, if they make a little guy, they'll put the arms on the side or something. If they're drying cracks, if the clay is cracking when it dries, you need to add more temper or help it dry slower. Sometimes if you have a handle and it's drying too faster than the rest of the pot, you wrap some saran wrap or something around it to keep it from drying so fast. So you want that whole pot to dry evenly, the whole pot. And when you have something that sticks out, a handle, something like that, a foot, then it's gonna. That's the same with rims. They will dry more quickly and it will crack. So make sure it dries in such a way that those extremities try to dry at the same rate as the rest of the pot. And you can do that by wrapping it in plastic or cloth or something. I appreciate you doing this demonstration. I have a whole piece of property covered in mesquite and we hate it. Now I know I can burn it. Mesquite makes good firewood, there's no doubt. Can you use horse manure? I've already covered this. The Feral Female Society says can you use horse manure? You can, but the form factor is not so great for stacking it up. I got to get back to my presentation, or I'm not going to get through all this. Okay, so another fuel that they used to use in prehistoric times is coal. So this is up my friend Bobby, and this is where he collects coal up on the reservation there. And then just like the sheep manure, he stacks the coal around the pottery, just like this, building a little, like a coal oven around the pot. And it burns like this all night. It'll burn for like 10 or 12 hours. It's a really short video, I apologize. It'll burn like this for like 10 or 12 hours all night long. It gets up to like 950 degrees. And in the morning, all that coal is burned to ash. This is the pot coming out of the firing now. And, that's a different thing. So, yeah, coal is a great fuel to use if it's available in your area. I actually am the proud owner of this pot now. So, I actually got it. I traded him for it at the Kiln conference last year. So, some of the people that do micaceous pottery, they use what's called, what do they call those? Bark sides, right? So, when they take a log to what do they call it? A sawmill, right? So you got a big old pine log coming to the sawmill, and they want to cut that into boards. So the first thing they do is they cut the sides off so that it's square, so then they can start chopping boards out of it. And so they'll take a piece off the top, and it'll just be a little wedge of wood with the bark on it. And then they'll do one on the side, and it'll just be a little wedge of wood with the bark on it. And so these things are like throwaway. So these guys up in New Mexico, they get these bark sides, and they use those to fire their pottery. So this is how there's this guy, Steve Rospopo, who is a micaceous potter from New Mexico. He come to the Kiln conference. And so these are some pictures of his firings that I have. So he has, this is like a fireplace grate, right? Like you would put in a fireplace to hold the logs up. And he's dug a shallow pit, and he will stack his pottery on top of this. So this acts as his kiln furniture. The way I stack rocks and then stack the pottery on the rocks, he's holding the pots above the coals and getting lots of air circulation using this fire grate. And then over the top of the grate, then he will stack his pottery. And you will see that he doesn't stack it over hot coals. He actually has fuel, I think bits of bark and paper underneath. So the whole thing gets lit all at once. And, hold on a second. And then those bark sides are stacked all around and over the top and then lit. And this is when it's all done. So here's one. He's got all these grates out here, and the pots are all taken off. They all fired perfectly. And so that's another way to do it. A different type of fuel that works just as good. And those bark sides, I think that's what they call them, is bark sides. But they're basically sawmill waste. If you live someplace where there's sawmills, you can pick those up real cheap. And so it's a great way to use some like waste material to fire your pottery, and it's quite effective. Now, another example of something unusual. I found this picture online. This is Tarahumara Indians from down in Mexico, and they're firing pottery. So they've got, as we're talking about alternative types of cover sherds, right? So what they've got here to protect the pottery from coming in contact with the fuel is a piece of tin. But under that tin, their hot coals that they're stacking above are pine cones. So there's something that, if you live in an area that has a lot of pine cones, that's an alternative fuel that you might think about. And another thing that is pretty common is bark, right? So a lot of places you have access to bark. It falls off trees, it lays out there, and you can get big chunks, big slabs of bark. And here's a firing that's done with, looks like ponderosa pine bark. Hold on, having some trouble. I don't know why it's doing that. This is the firing I did a couple years ago with walnut bark, black walnut. So bark works real good, and bark has an advantage. This is another one of those pictures of Tarahumaras, and they're also using what appears to be pine bark as their primary fuel around the pot. So the pots are stacked inside of that with that bark stacked around it. And this is one when I go out to the field school in New Mexico to teach the archaeology students. In that Cliff Valley, there's lots and lots of cottonwoods. And so I can just stop on the side of the road and collect big slabs of cottonwood bark. And cottonwood bark burns really hot and really clean. And that's what this firing is. So the advantage of that cottonwood bark is, like the manure, when a log or a stick burns, it burns into coals, little chunks, and they fall away because they're not held up anymore, right? But that manure, like I said, it holds its shape as it burns to ash, and the bark does the same thing. It holds its shape. So if you build a little oven out of those slabs of bark and burn it, then as it burns, it just stays like a little in the shape of the bark, but ash, and holds the heat in there, give you a nice oxidizing soak at the end. So bark is a great alternative for firing. And then grass, there's some really great videos on YouTube of people firing with grass in like Africa and India and stuff. So I encourage you to check that out. But I've done some experiments with grass. This is one of them. And I've never got it to work. And the reason is you have to keep adding more grass because the grass burns away in like a couple of seconds. So you throw grass on it burns, it gets really hot, and then it burns down. And then you have to throw more grass on it. And it burns really fast and it burns down. And eventually you end up with this big layer of ash and kind of sooty black burned grass that just smothers the pot. And the pots always come out all black and kind of sooty. So I never could get it to work. There's got to be a trick to it, but I can't figure it out. And like other people have mentioned here, manure is just grass in a different form factor. So you're allowing it to not smother the pot, to stack around it and let oxygen or let air flow around that pot. So manure is a great way to use grass in a more usable form factor. Okay, let me check my chats here. Will Red Pixie, will pulverized stoneware be okay for low fire clay temper? Yeah, stoneware makes great temper. The trouble with stoneware is it's harder to grind up. So earthenware is a lot more easy to grind. But yeah, sure, it is. It is good. Can you use charcoal for around the pottery? Oh yeah, absolutely. Charcoal is a great firing thing, and I will get to that in a little bit here. The ones fired on a fireplace grate. Wow, those have a metallic sheen. Oh, that's that micaceous clay. So micaceous clay it has mica in it, little flecks of glittery mica, and so when they make the pots out of them, they look like metal. They're really pretty, and you can buy that micaceous clay at New Mexico Clay. So if you go to their website, New Mexico Clay, they sell that micaceous clay. It is really pretty. Bark is kind of fire retardant. Yeah, the bark I've used burns really good, Andrew, so I don't know about that. The metal grates with pottery atop surprises me. I would think it would get too red hot touching the pottery. No, it works fine. Metal holding up pottery works just fine. It doesn't do anything. Will a pookie with a couple cracks in it still in one piece be okay to use? Oh, absolutely, Gabriel. I use pookies that have cracks in them all the time and in my workshops. How long does the fire need to be held at the max temperature? A. Duncan asked how long the fire needs to be held at the max temperature. So it doesn't need to. Basically, when I'm firing, I get it to the temperature I'm looking for, be that 750, 800, and then I just let it start cooling down. It doesn't need to be held. Like those longer soaks I've talked about, those are better for if you're trying to make sure you've burned all the carbon out or get it to oxidize really good. But it's not necessary. You get it to the top temperature, you're good. Can you use charcoal for around the pottery? Yeah, I'm going to show you how to use charcoal in just a minute. How long does the fire need to be held at max temp? Do they have maybe braid or twist the grass together? Yeah, the pictures I've seen, Terry, they're not twisting the grass. They're throwing big clumps of grass on the fire. So, like I said, there's maybe an understructure of wood or something to make sure it burns out. I don't know. You've got to get that oxygen in there, though, and the grass ends up smothering itself because it just keeps falling down. So oxygen is the critical element that's missing in those grass fires. In love with pottery, can you explain oxidation process? Yeah, there's two kinds of oxidation that go on in firing. There's oxidation of iron and oxidation of carbon. And sometimes when we're being brief, we just say oxidation and we're not specifying what kind, and it can be very confusing. Oxidation of carbon is getting all the carbon to burn out of your clay. Your clay naturally has carbon in it because it's just dirt and it's been in the ground for millions of years and it's collected organic material. You've got to burn that out so that your colors are bright and your pottery isn't like gray or dark. Oxidation of iron turns those irons red as opposed to like brown or black, okay? And so you got to have a lot of oxygen available. When that fire is burning nice and hot, the fire's using all the oxygen and there's none available for the clay. And that doesn't start happening until you're way, way down on the cool down part. Late to the show, Jimmy Carr. Hey, Jimmy. Educated guess on how long to hold the fire if you don't have. Just let it get to where you just burn it. I stoke it once. I put the wood on. I let it burn. And when that's done burning, I call it good. I generally don't even add more wood to it afterward. Try that and see how it works for you. Have you ever tried using pottery firing the way they do in the Great Pottery Throwdown on Netflix? No, that's not my thing. Yeah, they're cheating, Jinxie. They're not firing the pottery. They call it a firing when they do those pit firings, but it's already been generally. I don't know. I haven't watched all the episodes of Great Pottery Throwdown, but generally when they're saying I'm doing a pit firing, the pots are already bisque fired. I'm talking about firing greenware pottery outdoors. I'm talking about actually turning mud into ceramics. Central Texas here. What are your recommendations toward conducting traditional firings but creating the least amount of smoke? Either charcoal or manure, Lonnie. Okay, let me move ahead because I'm running out of time. Pit fires are down on the ground. They're not on the surface. And the ground can kind of help hold in heat a little better. The problem is if you're trying to oxidize, if you're trying to get like bright reds and stuff, a lot of times it's hard to do that down on the ground. You're not getting enough oxygen down in that hole. And so what I tend to do is what you see here, which is a shallow pit. The pot isn't completely below surface. It's kind of at surface. So you have a little bit of ground around it to hold in heat, but you're also, got lots of cross currents of oxygen coming in there. And so these trench kilns that they do up at the Kiln conference, this is an Anasazi style trench kiln. This is buried deep. It's surrounded by stone, and they get these really hot. And this is how they make that black on white pottery. So once they've got the primary fire done, they've stacked the pottery in there, then they start stacking this fuel over the top. And then this is the one John did last year. He didn't even line it with stone. He just built a fire and put the pots in a hole, built a fire, and he just kept stoking it over the course of like a couple of hours. He literally got this kiln over 1,000 degrees Celsius, really, really hot, just by keep stoking that fire and then building it up more and more. So those trench kilns can get really hot. This is a little short video that I made last year showing the process. So this is preheating the pot. This is the primary fire. Building a bed of coals and preheating the pots. Now that's burned the coals. They're going to stack that over the coals on rocks. Then once those are all stacked in there, they're going to put cover shirts over the top of the pots to keep the coals from falling down on them, and then stack all this wood over the top of that. When they light this off, this thing gets super hot. And then once that's done burning, and that'll take a couple hours, that's a lot of wood, then they smother it. They shovel the dirt back over the top. And they wait until the next day and let it cool down. And then they open it up and pull out the copper. And it's all, it didn't get a chance to oxidize because they smothered, they kept the oxygen out, and that results in really white and black. And that's how they do those trench kilns. Now, I was trying to do like salado firing in a pit. This is a little concrete ring that they used to give me to fire when I was holding my workshops up in Globe. And it didn't work. It didn't work very good because I wasn't getting that kind of temperature. Mine are like low temperature firings. I don't want to go over 800 degrees with the salado potteries. I'll ruin them. And without that kind of temperature to burn all the carbon out, the pots all come out dark down in this pit. You just can't do it in a pit like that. And so, you've got to be willing to go really hot if you're going to pit fire. So this is what I tend to do, is more like just a shallow pit. And I get better success with that because I'm not getting up. I don't want to generate all that temperature and all that hours of burning. So this is what Tony Soares calls urban Anasazi firing, and I've got a link to Tony's video down in the doobly-doo if you're interested in that. So these bricks are just stacked up loosely. They're not set up with mortar or anything. They're just stacked, and then charcoal is put around the pottery. And this is going to be going on up at the Kiln conference next month as well. This is from last year's Kiln conference. And so this is what that looks like. This is one I did in my yard. Bricks are just stacked there. Charcoal is put in around the pottery, and it doesn't produce any smoke, or very little smoke. This is when it first starts. You know how like when you're barbecuing, it produces a little smoke. It produces very little smoke. It produces no flames. Nobody calls the fire department. If the neighbors smell it, they just smell burning charcoal and they think, you're grilling some steaks or something. So this is a great way to fire in town without alerting the neighbors or anything else. And then it just slowly, that charcoal will just slowly burn down. You just leave it there 4 or 6 hours or so. It'll take a while to burn down. And then, when it's cool enough, you can pull your pots out. Now, this is a little different. This is my friend Bill Warner, and he just builds a loose brick enclosure like that, but he's not using charcoal. So he's just doing like a surface firing. When you stack the pottery over the coals, and then you stack the wood around it, except he's got this brick enclosure. So it's a little more contained, and then the bricks are kind of radiating some of that heat back. So it gets a little hotter. And that's another way to do it. And this is the same thing. This is his pottery in that little brick enclosure. And I did a video of this last year, and it works. It works really good. And he does this in his backyard over there in Chandler, Arizona. So, really great way to fire in town. It's contained, but it's basically just an open fire in your backyard. And then he also built this tandoor, and it's got air holes at the bottom. And it's the same way. He just puts the pottery in, loads it from the top, stacks the wood around it, but he gets a lot of draw on that tandoor, and it gets really hot in there. So That's a great way to do it as well. Okay, let me go back to the chat real quick. We're a couple minutes over our hour, but we're okay. I'm trying to figure out where I was. What if you made a big pile of grass, says Andrew Sock, and put your pot on top? And yeah, I'd worry about the pot falling as that grass burned too. I don't know. Do your own experiments, Andrew. I'm just telling you what I know. Sasha, a way to measure temp of fire. Linksy, have you ever tried? No, we already read that one. Central Texas here. What are your recommendations towards? Yeah, that's what I already read that. Hard to hear you over the music. There's music playing? Are you kidding me? Oh, you're talking about on those little videos. I'm sorry. I forgot there was music on those videos. I apologize. Yeah, those are just little videos I'd made, and I thought they'd be nice to throw in here because they're short. But I forgot there was audio. I should have removed the audio before I put them in here. I apologize for that. Terry, I apologize. Video to yeah, I'm sorry, Granny Goose. I forgot there was music on those little things. I thought they would be really great to share here because I could explain, and then I should have taken the audio off. Just joined, so you may have covered this, but have a roughly 2-foot square fire stand just under 1/2 foot deep. Is it feasible to fire small pots in something that size? Absolutely. Use charcoal or something if you want. It doesn't have to make a lot of smoke or flames if you have a small area. Just use charcoal or even manure. How about a way to do DIY wood raku? Yeah, I don't know enough. Jessica Welch is asking about raku. I don't know enough about raku to even comment on it, but I'm sure it's doable. All right, everybody. I think I covered all the things. We talked about fuel. We talked about different kinds, different species of wood. We talked about different sizes of wood, using small wood as opposed to like cordwood. We talked about different types of fuel like manure, coal, charcoal. And we talked about the structure, right? So like teepees, or like pouring the coal all over it, or stacking the manure up. If you have questions, let me know. Reminder that the Kiln conference is coming up October 7th through the 9th. And also, hey, if you don't mind, give this video a like, because that will help me with the algorithm very much. And if you're interested in that Kiln conference and you can't make it to New Mexico next month, then subscribe, because I've got a lot of videos coming out showing the different firings at the Kiln conference. And there'll be a lot of things to learn about firing outdoors. I hope I answered all your questions. If I didn't, you can leave them as a comment down here. I always try to answer all my comments. I thank you all for joining me today and hanging out. Have a great weekend. If I can figure out how to turn this thing off. Help, Jane, stop this crazy thing.